Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This is something I experienced shortly before moving out of one of my teenage homes a couple of years ago, when I was around 13 or 14 years old. My great-grandmother used to collect dolls. One of the dolls, I took a particular liking to because of how goddamn creepy it looked. She picked up on it and actually gave it to me not too long before she passed away. Fast forward to the story at hand. My two stepbrothers and I were sitting in the living room, chatting late at night around 1 a.m. or so. For context, this was a cookie-cutter house, so when you walked in, you basically had to choose between going upstairs or downstairs. The living room was directly upstairs from the front door. There was a fireplace on the left-hand wall, but not much else to note. Since it was an open concept, adjacent to the wall was the railing overlooking the doorway area, and in front of the railing was the couch. There was also a television sitting on the ground against the wall opposite the couch. During our conversation, we got into the topic of childhood paranormal experiences. Joking around, I went and grabbed the doll from my bedroom and leaned it up on the shelf above the fireplace. I made sure when I put the doll up there that it was leaning securely so it wouldn't slip off. Some things that are now important: the television was on, but it was just the no-signal screen. And because we were preparing to move, there were boxes and trash bags stacked in front of the fireplace at least 3 to 5 feet out. We were all sitting on the couch at the time this happened. In the middle of the story, my youngest stepbrother was telling about an experience he had in the basement of a childhood home. The doll was flung forward from the shelf, landing a good few feet away from the boxes, meaning it flew a good 6 to 8 feet away from the fireplace. At the exact same time the doll made contact with the ground, the television shut itself off and then turned itself back on. We had never had any electrical issues in that house or with that TV. Needless to say, we about pissed ourselves. I know people are going to say it's possible the doll had just fallen, but the doll flew forward off the shelf even though it was leaning backward. And things that fall don't typically fall outward several feet. Once a year, my parents go on vacation somewhere in the US, usually to the Bahamas or Florida. They leave me in charge of the house with my dog and ask me to check on my Nana, who lives in our basement. Normal, right? There's another important bit of background information. My dad takes part in this weird golfing competition with his friends, where if someone wins a certain number of holes, they get to take home this creepy doll as a sort of trophy. I don't get why, but I guess it's some running gag. Well, my dad won the competition, and he brought the doll home before he left. I am not at all scared of dolls. In fact, before my parents left, I slept with it beside me as a joke. It was basically an old baby doll with a missing eye and a brown dress. I don't know where it came from and didn't really bother to ask. November rolls around, and my parents leave for their vacation. Everything goes normally for a little while, but then things start to get weird. Because I'm the stir-the-pot little brother, I put the doll on my sister's bed, she's in university, and took a picture to send to her as a joke. She hates dolls. I left the doll in her room, walked into mine, and sent her the photo, thinking nothing of it. A few minutes later, I heard a massive bang. Startled, I jumped up and looked into the hallway. My sister's door had slammed shut. Now, our hallway has no opening windows, and there wasn't any sort of draft. Even if there had been, that bang sounded forceful. Feeling a little on edge, I opened her door and saw that the doll had fallen face forward, even though I had left it sitting upright. I thought it was weird but just brought the doll back into my room and moved on. That night, I was sleeping in my parents' room. I have to sleep in there when they're away because I need to keep an eye on my dog. She refuses to sleep anywhere else. I woke up suddenly in the night, which was odd. I usually sleep straight through. I checked the time, it was around 3 a.m. This immediately freaked me out because I'd read that it was the witching hour. I glanced over at my dog, and she was awake too, her head up, staring. I put on my little puppy voice and asked her if she needed to pee, but she just stared back at me, then looked at the closet. I followed her gaze and saw that the closet was open, even though I clearly remembered shutting it before going to bed. I quickly turned on the lamp and got out of bed to close the door. I didn't even bother looking inside. My teenage brain still thought a ghost was more likely than an intruder. So, I just got back into bed, scrolled on my phone for a bit, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up as usual to feed my dog. But when I walked out into the hall, I noticed that my bedroom door was open. I always close my door when I'm not in it. It was still dark outside because I have to feed my dog around 6 a.m., or she throws a fit. I turned on the light and looked inside my room. The doll was on the floor. I had left it on my bed. Now, I was starting to feel paranoid, but I just put the doll back on the bed and decided to leave my door open. After feeding my dog, I went back to bed to get a couple of extra hours of sleep. That's when the most frightening thing happened. I was woken up by a loud bang. A sound loud enough to wake me, the heaviest sleeper in my family. I quickly got up and ran downstairs, my first thought being that maybe my Nana had fallen in the basement and was banging for me to help her. But when I got downstairs, I realized the banging was coming from my balcony door. I saw the glass shaking as if something was slamming against it from the outside. The banging was so loud it was making the counters shake. The strangest part? My dog was just standing in front of the door, staring at it. She's the type of dog who will start barking at a mouse fart. I was really shaken up at this point. Outside was completely still, no wind at all. I texted my parents and told them what was going on. As soon as I hit send, the banging stopped. They told me it was probably nothing and not to worry about it. I went downstairs to check on my Nana, but she had no idea what had happened. She's almost completely deaf, so she wouldn't have heard it. She also can't walk up the stairs, so there was no way she had anything to do with it. That was the last weird incident that occurred. The next week, my parents got back. I didn't tell them everything that happened. I didn't want them to think I was a chicken or something. Needless to say, I moved that doll out of my room until my dad took it back to his golf team. Nothing strange happened after that. I still have no idea what went on during those couple of days, but it was certainly bizarre. Now, I kind of wonder about the story behind that doll. When I was around 7 to 9 years old, I don't remember the exact age, I had this doll that was about as tall as a German Shepherd. The doll had a voice box that, when pressed, would laugh and giggle for about 30 seconds. This voice box was placed in a pocket on the back of the doll's dress. Eventually, I got annoyed with the voice box because it would go off frequently. Before this incident, I had assumed that something behind it was pressing it or that the pocket was sewn too tightly, causing it to activate even when there was no pressure on it. So, as I said, I got annoyed with the box. I emptied out a drawer, placed the box inside, and carefully closed the drawer, making sure not to move the box in the slightest. After that, I went to sleep. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of the voice box coming from the doll. I had placed the doll on the opposite side of the room from the drawer where the box was stored, momentarily forgetting that I had removed the box in the first place. I tried to go back to sleep, but about 5 minutes later, I suddenly remembered where I had put the box. I got up, opened the drawer, and there it was, still in the exact spot where I had left it. A few weeks later, I got rid of the doll. However, for a few years after that, I could still hear the laughter from the doll's voice box. I only remembered this incident when I recently found one of my porcelain dolls sitting on the kitchen counter. My mom had moved it. For some reason. This happened about 10 years ago when I was in secondary school. That year, I was in the morning session. Since my school was in Queenstown and I stayed in Geelong, I had to leave the house quite early to catch the 7 a.m. bus. Normally, I would get up at 6 a.m. to get ready for school. The night before the incident, my sister and I had difficulty sleeping. We shared the same bedroom. It was a very warm night, and since my father was working the night shift, we decided to sleep in my mother's air-conditioned room. Even then, I still couldn't sleep. So at 5:30 a.m., I decided to take a bath and get ready for school. I took my bath in my mother's bathroom and then went up to my room to get ready. I was combing my hair when I heard someone calling sister in Malay. I turned around, thinking my sister had woken up, but there was no one there. I went to my mother's room and found my sister still asleep. I grew scared but brushed it off as my imagination. I went back to my room to get my school bag, and again, I heard it. This time, it was a small child's voice calling me. I turned and saw my sister's doll, the one that cries when you take out the pacifier, and its eyes actually blinked at me. I immediately ran to my mom's room and stayed there until 6:45 a.m. Once I got home from school, I took the doll and threw it in the storeroom. Since then, I have banned all dolls from my room. I'm going to share something that happened to me as a child. At the time, I was around 10 or 11, and my sister would have been 8 or 9. Long story short, our cousins, who we saw every weekend, had purchased a life-sized knitted clown from an op shop or thrift store. I know what you're thinking, why on earth would anyone buy one of those? My thoughts exactly. Anyway, from the moment this clown arrived at their place, weird things started happening. I'll give you a couple of examples. They would place the clown in their bedroom, and when they woke up, it would be sitting on the couch or in the kitchen. This went on for some time. One night, a few months after they got the clown, my sister and I had to sleep over at our cousin's place. By this point, we were all super scared of the clown and didn't want it anywhere near us. So, for whatever reason, we locked it in the outdoor dog kennels they had. Sure enough, when we woke up the next morning, the clown was inside the house, sitting on the couch. Although all our parents were skeptical, our uncle, our cousin's father, decided it would be best to get rid of the clown for good. He put it on the back of his Uda, ready to take a load of rubbish to the tip that afternoon. This is the part one really can't explain. My sister, our two cousins, and I were at the back of their place, riding on the mini four-wheelers they had. We stopped to take a break and chat. Then, out of literally nowhere, we saw the clown running, like it was human, through the long grass about 50 meters away from us. Terrified was an understatement. After about 10 seconds, it disappeared into the grass. We ran to our parents and tried to explain what we saw. When everyone realized the clown was no longer on the back of our uncle's Uda, no one could understand, especially us 4 kids, after seeing what we saw. That was the last time we ever saw the clown. We went back to the long grass where we saw it, but nothing was there. We still talk about it to this day, and honestly, we still can't believe it. This story sounds like a load of bullshit, I know, but we know what we saw that day, and it's something I'll never get out of my head. I suppose the underlying question is, where did the clown go, and what caused this to happen? This story happened to me during the lunar 7th month, about 5 years ago. I went over to my then ex's house for dinner at around 6 p.m. After dinner, I was bored enough to actually play with my ex's niece, nephews, and a bunch of other kids, all aged around 5 to 8 years old, in one of the bedrooms. I was watching the kids play when suddenly, my ex's 5-year-old niece, Crystal, tripped over an English baby doll, one of those with blinking eyes, eyelashes, and an ultra-creepy look. Crystal started crying, and like most Chinese parents who hit whatever hurt their precious little child, I picked up the doll and started spanking its bottom repeatedly. It worked, and Crystal started giggling. So, I put the doll down on the ground and went to the living room to watch TV. Suddenly, my ex's older sister, Brenda, came out from an adjacent room, asking which kid was the little prankster who had tapped her from behind several times. Upon hearing the commotion, I asked her what had happened. She explained that she had been in the bedroom adjacent to the kids' room, where the door was left ajar and the lights were off because her fiancé was taking a nap. With nothing else to do, she was gazing out the window at the mall opposite their flat when someone tapped her lower back from behind. The first time, she ignored it and brushed it off as one of the kids playing a prank on her. The second time, she turned around and, from the corner of her eye, caught a glimpse of a half-naked child dashing out of her room. Thinking the kids were trying to play with her, she went to look for them in the other room but was puzzled to find that all of them were fully clothed. She was certain of what she had seen but came out of the room confused. Who exactly was that half-naked child? Brenda immediately told her aunt about the incident, who then sought help from a Bomo over the phone. This is where the creepy part begins. The Bomo told her aunt to enter the children's room and look under the bed. He insisted that she would find a doll there. Furthermore, he described one specific detail, the color of the doll's eyes, which were blue. I accompanied their aunt to the room and retrieved the doll. To my astonishment, it was the same doll I had spanked earlier. At that moment, countless questions raced through my mind. How did the Bomo know there was a doll under the bed? How did he know the color of its eyes? Why did the child not come after me, since I was the one who spanked the doll? The Bomo immediately instructed their aunt to leave the doll under a tree in the estate's park. And so, we did. Later that night, we went out for supper, and when we returned, the doll was gone. That raised even more questions. Who, in their right mind, would dare pick up such a doll during the lunar 7th month? My mom always emphasized never to pick things up during this time because they could be dirty. I kept quiet about spanking the doll, fearing I'd get scolded by my ex. Of all the questions that went through my head that night, only one was answered, by another medium, a friend of my mom. She claimed that I was untouchable by dirty things because I had a pair of really thick eyebrows. Glad I have them. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.